Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. Healthcare and what we're doing with healthcare is in the news a lot. And I thought it would be really interesting to speak with someone who changed their career to get very involved in the healthcare sector and become a nurse after a long career, a reasonably long career in the fashion business. To talk about her career, about her resilience, about her own personal story, and about what she thinks about healthcare today. Margarita Machura has joined us tonight. Margarita, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Brian, for hosting me and for allowing me to have this platform where I could share my story, and hopefully that could resonate in a positive way with your listeners.
Margarita Machura is a dedicated registered nurse. She's focused on holistic patient-centered care in the medical surgical unit at Oakville Trafalgar Memorial Hospital. In her first year as a nurse, she was awarded the Florence Nightingale Nursing Award, recognizing her outstanding dedication to patient care. She's independently funded her professional development, traveling nationally and into the United States to attend conferences, workshops, and webinars in wound care, ostomy, and incontinence management. It's going to be a fascinating conversation because in addition to that, you spent quite a while in fashion. So tell me a little bit about you were a 2-decade career in fashion management and elite image consulting before you entered healthcare. Tell me about your career progression to start with, please. What took you from fashion to nursing and healthcare?
Well, it was definitely quite a bit of a journey. My personal experience that I have encountered in one of the top hospitals led me to step down from my role in image consultation and kind of do a little reset. So I had two options. One option was to stay mad and angry, and that's just being human. Or second one, which was probably much better, to become the change in the system. So of course,
sorry, I missed something. Why were you mad and angry? Or
so
potentially mad and angry? So
the
what
mad
happened?
and angry, it was the missed opportunity in my patient as a patient. And like as I said maybe earlier, I almost missed a heartbeat. When I say that, that means I was that close of not sitting and having a conversation with you today.
Oh my
So
God, what happened?
Uh, I want to keep this a very positive conversation, but I
But
will discuss that
tell us just a little bit about what happened. What made you so close to passing?
Sure. So I went into septic shock, and that was something that so I guess we're going to talk about it. With my son, when I was pregnant, I surpassed my due date by many days, and then instead of having a C-section, they decided to proceed a natural way of a delivery. And my kid arrived nearly at 11 pounds, which was a little risky for someone of my frame. And that set me a little bit, let me say the journey was long to even at a delivery point, because it was 23 and a half hours of active delivery, to the point that it was so critical that they had no choice but to go and seek emergency ways to make this happen. And at that time, I was faced with a very hard decision, because the physicians looked at me and they said, you only have two options. You can either go the natural way with help, or we can now proceed with a C-section. But the risk factors are, if we go with a C-section, you're at risk. The baby's at risk. And if we go the other way, where forceps, you are at risk. We can't guarantee. Which way would you like to go? I just said, I want the baby. So I aimed for the baby, and I put myself at risk to only find myself in a troubling situation 5 days later, where I went into a septic shock while being at home after post-discharge, rushed to the hospital. And I would say I had guardian angels, because the path has opened up for me all the way to the hospital from my residence. I just couldn't believe it. It was 2:15 on Thursday night, and I was traveling down to downtown Toronto, and I knew this was nearly like a close call. We should have called the ambulance, but we didn't. I arrived at emergency. Not even one soul was at emerge. Like, I've never seen anything like it. And the only thing I remember losing semi-conscious was I just stick my arm, they run fluids, and the rest, I vaguely can recall anything after that. So I found myself in the hospital, and I received an excellent care after, but I faced a really, really close call. And there is such a thing as out-of-body experience. I have experienced that. So sitting here and chatting with you, it's definitely a privilege. And once again, I do thank you for opening up the platform to share my story, although, again, I wanted to keep it positive. So after this incident...
Sorry, I apologize. I've got to ask, how's your son?
Oh, he's perfect. He's perfect. He's wonderful. Just the joy and pride of he is literally perfect. He's 13. He is almost 6'1". He's a great basketball player. He thrives academically. Like, I'm blessed. Like, there's so many blessings. And I think, like I said, things happen for a reason.
And you're okay now.
Oh yeah, I'm okay.
And so was this issue that you got bad treatment in the delivery room?
So there was decision that I was not hurt as a patient. Initially, when I went in and I said, there's no way I can have this child natural birth. We need to move forward and facilitate an alternative such as C-section. I'm just not built. And with ultrasounds, this child is already showing at 9.5. We know for a fact he's not going to arrive at 9.5. And then I was turned down that option. And they said, you just have to wait. This is the healthiest way for you to deliver. And I just didn't have a good feeling. It was a feeling that I had. And they kept me about 10 days. And then I was past the due date. And the baby had a good time inside. So he was not coming out. And guess what? I had no choice but to go to the hospital. At that point, they're like, we have to induce you. So once they induced me, it just happened right away. I thought I was going to have the baby right away, but I didn't. 23 and a half hours pushing. So my body was gone, gone by that time. Mm-hmm.
What an experience. And this experience motivated you to get into healthcare and give up your prior career. Is that correct?
Yes. So it wasn't prior to, it was more post when I went into being grateful for what actually did happen. And one thing, Brian, I want to bring forward is that this is not about talking about how good or bad healthcare system is. This is about recognizing we are all human, and active listening and listening to a patient. That's the key. Receiving the excellent patient care. And I am the testament to that, because I was there trying to advocate for myself. And it's just the conversation was not happening. People were not listening to me. And therefore, I run into that situation. So me being in the delivery, I'm really not quite sure. No one have seen me after I delivered my child. There was no follow-up. It was like a deadline. I ended up going back to the same hospital when I was going into that septic shock. When I started to seize, I said, the one thing I said, I just want to go back where I started this journey. And of course, I was admitted and I received proper care. And I was there for a couple of days, I think 5 days after that. And I had no answers. I was just discharged. So that is where I was just angry. And I was sad. And I literally felt decapitated. Like, I just felt powerless.
Decapitated?
Yes, decapitated, meaning like I had no voice. No one was returning my phone calls. And I just felt lost. And in some ways, I felt very fragile and very frightened to speak about this. Why? Because I didn't want to put a target on my back. I didn't want to be mistreated going forward. I literally did not know my rights. I was just scared. I'm not a troublemaker. So for me to start stirring the pot, it wasn't in my nature, but I knew I couldn't stay that way. It was not serving me well. It was not good for who I was. I'm a happy person. I'm here because I don't want to say I'm a people pleaser, but what makes me the happiest is when I can interact with people, when I could do something for somebody to ease their whatever situation is. I thrive on that. That has been taken away from me. So
Okay, but this is what motivated you to go into healthcare and leave your fashion business. Is that correct?
it did. That was the turning
Okay,
point.
so we're going to take a break for some messages and come back in 2 minutes and talk about that a little bit, because I think that old adage about what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. You know, it often takes a very negative experience for people to find their passion. I often say that people have a signature story that defines who they are in the future, and maybe what you experienced is your signature story. It's your the thing that turned you and turned your life around in a different way. But let's investigate that after a message break. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga 960. We're chatting tonight with Margarita Machura, who's got this incredible story. Like, my gosh, what a story about being in septic shock and being rushed to emergency after a very, very difficult birth. But it motivated you to make a change in your life. And so let's talk about that. So you were in fashion management and you were an image consultant. Tell us a little bit about what you were doing.
So for nearly almost 2 decades, I've emerged into a fashion industry. I've always loved image, and it was not really about the clothing and selling. It was all about bringing the best out of a person. So that's what that was kind of like a driving force into the image consultation, where I found myself amongst the elites coming in. So I used to work for a fashion house called BCBG Max Azria when that was a big thing, and they were very well known for their dresses. I actually started my journey at Sherway Gardens at their very first location. And this is how I discovered, well, I always had a thing for fashion, but I had no idea that I had this gift to reach people in the levels where I was catering beyond the fashion industry. So I was doing an image consultation. I had the ability to attract very elite clientele with my skills to dress them. I had this intuition in me where I have seen a person, I looked at the person, and I've always opened a dialogue. So I was able to enter their personal space to learn beyond the article of a clothing. It was more so, what's the event? What's the purpose? It's not about, do you want it? Do you need it? What you're trying to get out of it to make you feel good, look good. Because I do believe in that kind of a statement: when you feel good, when you look good, you feel good. And it does. It actually does it's a very strong statement.
Yeah,
and I've
for sure.
witnessed that. So this is how I walked into this fashion industry. And then I ended up being an image consultant. And then in addition
what's an image consultant?
So image consultant, it's somebody that, for instance, like I've dealt with a lot of professional people, and they would say, here it is, I am changing a career right now, and I need to fit the bill. That was the kind of like a quote, fit the bill. So I would analyze what they do for a living, what are their favorite colors are, what are their moods, what's their lifestyle is, what their social life looks like. And based on that, and I would take that to the next level. And I would always say, what are you trying to get out of? Like, are you trying to get a promotion? Are you trying to get more social media attention? Are you trying to enter this kind of a group? Like, what is your goal? And based on that, I would bring this back into their wardrobe. I had one of their elite clients. She's one of the major developments actually in nationally and internationally. And I had her as one of my clients, and her idea was, I have no time to get dressed, but here is my monthly schedule. Those are the meetings. Those are the officials I'll be meeting with. You need to run with it. So I literally would go into her residence, and I would select by day, by the meeting, who she was meeting, the type of individual she would be meeting.
What she should wear.
What she should wear, and what is the message she's trying to bring along with her image. In addition to that, Brian, I would take a step further, and I would have to fit And you think about image consultation as just for that moment, but actually it wasn't. It was, I had to foresee the unforeseen, meaning today it's a sunny day, but what if it's a rainy day? Dress code will change and the colors will change, the mood will change. So you have to speak to that. So you can use this color palette. You have to move to another color palette. There's also clients that I had out of Canada and in Florida where they had some special events happening and they just said, I want to be different. So I collaborated with a phenomenal designer, Lucien Matisse. He's a Canadian designer, very dear to my heart. I would place a call and I said, Lucien, we've got a project. And he would say, what is it?
Many people would love this kind of an opportunity, but you gave it all up to change to healthcare.
I give it all.
So tell me how and why you gave it up. You had this experience, obviously, and
Brian, I don't hear you.
So you gave it all up, which sounds like it was a pretty exciting career. Did you do this right after? You didn't do it right after having a baby. It must have been a while after having the baby. You decided to change careers. How did you do that?
So for me, it was taking a timeout. The event that happened in the hospital and how I felt decapitated, it kind of put me in a pause. And I said, well, I'm lost. That's how I felt. I said, I'm really lost. I can't stay in this dark moment. I have to make a change. And one of the things that came, it was very clear to me, suffering. And what I felt and being so close to go to the other side, I said, I will never, ever want anybody. I make people happy. Even when I was in image consultation and then as an image consultant, I had people smiling. And I said, I no longer had a joy in that because I was lost. I didn't know who I was anymore. I did, but all of a sudden had no purpose. I have no direction. So I said, no, I can't do it. Because I'm the type of a person, I was also raised this way. You don't focus on the problem, you focus on the solution. So like I said, I became very quiet and very reserved. And I said, I need to get out of here. And that was it. When I said suffering was the key word. And I said, well, what can I do? What can I do? I know what I can do. I can just go to nursing school.
And you went. After 20 years in the fashion business, you went to nursing school.
I went to nursing school with literally a baby attached to my hip. And I just went full force. I had an extremely supporting family. I had extremely supporting friends as well, where they would babysit while I would study. And Brian, I'm going to tell you, trying to recover after what has happened to me, and I may add to it, I had 3 other surgery because as a result of that, surgeries that just made me feel awful. But I had those 3 surgeries while in school. I remember going to write an exam, and the morning of, I was still on the operating table. And then I'm like, I have an exam. I cannot, like, I don't have
surgeries associated with the septic shock challenge?
So the 2 surgeries were, the 3rd surgery was affiliated with stress. I believe it was stress induced because it was in reference to my appendix. So I can't blame that on that. That was yes.
And the first year, through all this stress and all these problems, you won a big award? The Florence Nightingale Award?
So that was, yes, my first year of nursing school, I won the award. And that's because we went as a clinical group to a long-term care facility. And there was one lady that was there for years. And I'm going to just make it super simple. Hygiene was the issue. She did not have a shower for years. So I have implemented, and I made this as a personal goal. I said, she will shower. And everyone is like, she will not. I said, watch me. So I initiated this kind of a foreplay where we raised money to go and get a big blow up, almost like a swimming pool for children. And we were trying to warm her into the idea. And that's what actually won me and my group the award. So yeah, that was pretty.
And you specialize in an interesting area, which is bedside care in acute settings. Why that?
That's right. So I always believe that acute setting, that's where patients are most vulnerable, because that's where I was. I was in the acute setting. I was in the hospital, and I had questions that were not answers, and my suffering happened at a bit like in an acute setting. So that's why I said I want to go back, and this is where I want to start. Surgical unit, I find it's very fascinating. When I was in nursing school, I was placed in various different areas of practice. I was very, very lucky because I was with a DOC, Director of Care of Long-Term Care, set up with them. That I was in public health, I was in cardiology, I was in triage. So I had pretty good exposure. And there was something about medical surgical unit that I took on. And then when I came in and I applied and I've got the placement and I've got a position offered the Oakville Trafalgar on that floor, that's where the story just began with me. And initially, I have encountered another patient, well, not another, one of many patients, where she had an ostomy. And she had a very complex situation. Very few people knew how to really provide the proper care, with an exception of specialized nurse. But that nurse only visits twice a week. So she just became my little project. I really love projects. And I said, this is the person I'm going to outreach. So I stayed on her case for many, many months, and it was very successful to the point where the patient was discharged from the floor. And majority of the times I was the girl to go to with the ostomy, to change the bag. And why I resonated with that area so much is because it has to do with body dysmorphia. It has to do with image. And now this is how you could see both professions.
The two connect. But right. Then I understand after all this, you decided to get very involved in the political action executive network for the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario. And now you take a very active role in some of the healthcare issues. And, healthcare issues are one of the prime things people are talking about on a very regular basis. So we're going to take a break for some messages, and we're going to come back with Margarita, and we're going to change things a little bit from her career and what's gone on in her transition from fashion to nursing, and talk about her role in political action and what she thinks about the healthcare industry and the situation in Ontario today. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2.
Hi.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. We're talking the healthcare system tonight. Margarita is our guest tonight. Margarita Machura, who was in fashion and then had a traumatic experience, decided that she wanted to take care of people, became a nurse, won the Florence Nightingale Award, and now she's actually got very involved in our healthcare sector from a political action standpoint. Margarita, many people describe the healthcare system today in Ontario as fragile or broken. Is it? What do you think?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
That's why I asked it to the expert.
Yes, way to put me on the spot. You know what? I always have believed that it's easy just to show up when things are going well, but the true test of a character is who stands when the times get tough. And guess what? The times are tough. The healthcare system is fragile in my perspective. Some may even call it broken. But initially, I refused to abandon it. And I want to be a part of the change, because we are in crisis, and there are several crises. We are nursing crisis, climate crisis, opioid crisis, and housing crisis. But since I'm a bedside nurse, I'm going to maybe speak a little bit to that. Post-COVID, post-pandemic, we were, not just us, the world was in crisis. So we're trying to surface, we're trying to look for a lifesaver and just hang in there. But that brought a lot of strain to the frontliner healthcare system, especially nurses. So there's a lot of burnouts. People are leaving their profession. Right now, the government projects that in 2032, so that's technically 7 years from now, we're going to be losing 33,000 of nurses. That's huge. Those numbers are very scary. But what's even more scary, Brian, is that the new nurses that are coming into our profession, they're not lasting. They want to leave because they feel not rewarded for their efforts. There are such as not rewarded in a dollar. A lot of them are talking about 42%, actually 48% of them, new grads, are interested in agency work. So that's actually the data that I have in front of me. And you would say, but Margarita, why? Right? Like, why agency? Well, I'm telling, it's more money, flexibility. Or acute community and long-term care is not offering that. And that's an actual fact. So better pay, and better pay is mentioned by 7 nurses and 10 nurses. This is the reason why they want to leave. They're also exploring options in the United States. United States is very aggressive in recruiting nurses right now. They have an incentive. It's called the clinical ladder, where when you have a Bachelor of Science in Nurses, automatically you're entering into a system where you are guaranteed, as long as you show initiatives, you're guaranteed an advancement in some ways. In the States, they're actively investing in their nursing staff. They're not oppressing them. They're not taking stuff away from them. They're investing. That's why.
Oppressing. You think that we're oppressing our nursing staff in Ontario?
Not giving the opportunities and not having access to funding. That's, in a way, it's oppressive. And I'm going to take it from what I have witnessed. And I have friends and colleagues that I'm very fortunate. I work in a beautiful facility that is very supportive. And there's other that are also supportive. But I also see, then we ask ourselves a question without saying it. Why are nursing leaving? Why those numbers are so aggressive? Right? There's a cost to that. Nurses
what's the solution? You know, people are talking about nurses leaving, people are talking about doctors leaving, people are talking about doctors not wanting to be GPs and only wanting to work as specialists, and then they make way too much money and move to the United States.
Right.
People are talking about not enough hospital beds, talking about wait times, talking about waits in emergency rooms. What's the solution?
I really think there is a mess. There is a mess, but just because there is a mess, there has to be a solution. And I think it's really important, Brian, that when people enter the nursing system, and when you have nurses that have been there for decades and they're still very passionate and they have a voice, they want to be heard, they see the lack of. And when I speak to the lack of, for example, when you have the new grads that are coming on board, and there's just not enough staff, not enough time to train them. And it's not the fault of the staff, because you're in crisis, you can do with as much as you can, but we have to look at the bigger picture, Brian. What has happened to those nurses? We lost 4 years. So the bedside connection was not there. Those new grads are coming on board with very little exposure on the floor, right? So we have to encourage more practice, maybe implement mentorships right now with incentives for the nurses that have been on the floor for a really long time. Give them a sense of engagement, bigger voice, and also take into the account what the actual nurses are saying, the ones that they've been actively in the crisis. Don't forget about them. And of course, what kind of incentives? Do we have some sort of an incentive? We can always look at, for instance, an employment structure from Norway. I know I'm reaching very far. And what those hospitals do for their healthcare providers. Maybe we should look at that and maybe try to bring it a little bit to Canada. So I'll give you another example, Brian. Nurses are really tired. They're working. They want to take a day off. They want to get a massage. How about expending a little bit more in the benefits? And more in the benefits area, right? So there's definitely ways that we can talk about it. And I think starting the conversation could make a difference. Asking, what is that we want? What do the nurses want? What do the physician want? And try to close the gap.
So is it just more funding that we need then? Because if it's more pay and better working hours and more benefits, we just need more funding, right?
I think that's a start, right? Like everyone responds to better pay, right? Because that's one of the leading cause of them wanting to go into and agencies because of the pay, because of the flexibility, right? So pay definitely plays a big role. And I'm going to tell you, Brian, nursing is a very important.
It sure is. There's no question.
You are dealing with a vulnerable patient, and you're dealing with life and death. Without people, where are we, right?
Without people, where are we? That's a great way to bring it to conclusion. I think we've got some really big issues in healthcare, and I appreciate you sharing some of them with you. But you also wanted to leave me with a message, or leave everyone with a message. You said before we got on the air that there was a message you wanted to talk to people about in regards to resilience. And so we're going to take a break and come back with some concluding comments from our guest, Margarita, about her message to us all. Not just at the season, all the time. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I've had a really interesting chat tonight with Margarita Machura. She's got a really interesting background and experience. She started out in fashion management and image consulting, and then had a harrowing experience with the birth of her child, where she ended up in septic shock and thinks she was close to death. And that process, that experience, said that she wanted to change her career and get into healthcare. And so she got into healthcare, and is in a part of healthcare in nursing, where she's dealing with bedside healthcare provided to people in acute settings, and feels like that's critically important. And clearly, bedside manners is one of the things that's important to you, and patient relations are important, because you won the Nightingale Award, which is the Florence Nightingale Award, which is, I think, fantastic. But then you got into political action, and you've been very involved in political action and support of nursing, and we've just talked a little bit about that. You said that you had a message. That's why you wanted to come on the show. You wanted to say something to people about your experience and your passion and
Yes.
and where you are today. Margarita,
Yes.
what's your message to everybody?
If there is one message I wanted to leave you audience and your listeners, is never give up on something you believe in, no matter how odd or the stacked against you. The truth is, success is never a straight path. It's filled with challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt. Sometimes those challenges come from people close to you, whether they're colleagues, co-workers, or even individuals you once trusted. And that alone can be extremely disheartening when those who you believe in don't extend a hand to help, or even worse, it seems to stand in your way in some ways. But here's the thing. Every action, whether it lifts you up or tries to break you down, it's a lesson. Remember that there is an opportunity. Those moments of disappointment teach you not only about others, but also about yourself. And that's the key. They force you to redefine, reflect, reaffirm what you stand for. Kindness, resilience, and the drive to do what's right, no matter what. For me, I have chosen to see those who have wronged me not as an enemies or as something I should fear, but as teachers and opportunities. Every obstacle they placed in my path has only strengthened my resolve and deepened my belief in my purpose. I am that nurse with a purpose. I always say it to everyone, and I'm very proud of that. And so my message is simple. Don't let negativity, doubt, or betrayal stop you. Whether it's from others or hardships of your journey, take every experience as an opportunity to grow, to recommit to your values, and to keep going. You only live once, and you have lots of opportunities to make it right.
Great inspirational words. Thank you, Margarita. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Brian.